The smell of rain and the promise of the first serious storm Southern California had seen in months were carried by the unusually fierce December wind that howled across downtown Los Angeles. As temperatures dropped to levels that reminded everyone why even paradise could turn harsh during winter nights that seemed to go on forever for those without warm places to call home, the normally busy streets of the Arts District were quieter than usual. Ozzy Osbourne purposefully slipped away from his security detail for one of his increasingly infrequent solo walks through the city, pulling his black wool coat tighter as he strolled down South Spring Street. He had grown to value these times of solitude at the age of 7, as they allowed him to see the world without the protective shield of handlers, bodyguards, and the meticulous preparation that usually surrounded his public appearances, erecting artificial barriers between himself and the everyday struggles of regular people. When the talk had gone longer than anticipated and his driver had been fired for the evening, he was on his way back from a late dinner appointment with his publisher to discuss final edits for his impending memoir. Ozzy had made the decision to walk the dozen blocks back to his downtown hotel instead of calling for another car or gathering his usual group of friends. He had been enjoying the unusual calm of streets that were typically crowded with tourists, traffic, and the fast-paced nature of urban life, which rarely permitted for true human connection. I would greatly appreciate it if you could like this story if you are liking it so far. For authors like me, your support is invaluable in expanding the readership of pieces like this. Compared to his past excursions to Los Angeles, the homeless encampments he visited were more expansive and ornate. Tent rows and temporary shelters pointed to a situation that had gotten much worse over the years of economic instability, growing housing costs, and social services that were unable to meet the basic requirements of the most vulnerable citizens of the city. Ozzy felt a familiar twinge of sympathy for the people attempting to make it on the streets of one of America's wealthiest and most image-conscious cities, having battled his own demons and knowing firsthand what it was like to feel lost, hopeless, and abandoned by systems that were meant to support you. There were gleaming high-rise residences that threw shadows over tent communities, pricey restaurants with long waits for tables, and individuals searching through trash cans for food scraps. The contrast was startling and unsettling. Shopping carts full of the desperate belongings of people who had lost everything except their will to live another day were being navigated by luxury cars. He heard the voice so quiet he nearly missed it, over the sound of the wind, far-off traffic, and the urban symphony of sirens and construction noise that served as the constant soundtrack to city life. It was near the corner of 4th and Spring, in the doorway of a closed boutique, whose window displays featured clothing that cost more than most people earned in a month. Sitting at the narrow doorway was a young girl, perhaps no more than 16, but with eyes that seemed decades older. She was wearing a flimsy blanket that appeared to have been rescued from somewhere, and had seen better days, perhaps better years. Her eyes possessed the kind of vigilant vigilance that street youngsters adopt to survive in settings where danger could appear from any direction at any moment, and her dark hair hung in knots around a face haggard with starvation and exhaustion. Something about her posture while sitting on cold concrete suggested a dignity and strength that terrible surroundings hadn't been able to break, despite her obvious vulnerability in desperate situations. She wasn't exhibiting the defeated resignation that frequently followed prolonged exposure to society's disregard for human misery, nor the angry desperation that occasionally marked those who had been homeless for a long time. "I'm hungry," two simple words that carried the weight of desperation, vulnerability, and a courage that most adults would struggle to find in similar circumstances, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but with a politeness and respect that suggested she had been raised with good values. Despite whatever circumstances had brought her to this doorway, it was an honest admission of a basic human need that wasn't being met, delivered with a dignity that somehow outweighed any plea or demand. There was no dramatic backstory, no manipulation or emotional blackmail, no attempt to explain her predicament or justify her need with dramatic details about her past. Something about the girl's straightforwardness and quiet dignity cut through the typical defenses individuals formed when faced with destitution on city streets, and Ozzy stopped instantly. Instead of addressing the people whose existence questioned their comfortable ideas about success, failure, and social obligation, the majority of pedestrians had learnt to avoid eye contact, to pretend not to hear help requests, and to concentrate on their phones or destination. When he looked closely, he saw that she was even younger than he had initially believed, probably no older than 14 or 15, and had the worrisome thinness that suggested that she had skipped meals out of necessity rather than choice, and that her developing body wasn't getting the nourishment it needed to grow. Everything about her appearance suggested that she had learnt to make do with whatever resources she could find or acquire from sporadic acts of kindness, and her clothing was layered for warmth rather than style, she said. Sophia, with a slight accent that suggested Latino heritage and family roots in a culture that valued respect for elders and formal courtesy, even in the most trying circumstances. Ozzy asked softly, crouching down to her eye level rather than looming over her in a way that might feel intimidating or condescending, to someone whose daily experience probably included a lot of adults treating her as invisible, disposable, or threatening. Sophia Martin. How long have you been out here, Sophia? He inquired, purposefully using her name to identify her as a unique individual rather than merely another faceless face in the expanding number of homeless people. About 6 months now, she replied, drawing the blanket tighter around her shoulders against the chilly wind that seemed to be getting stronger as the evening wore on. Since my mom died from cancer and I couldn't stay with my foster family anymore because they didn't have enough space for all the kids they were supposed to be taking care of. The matter-of-fact way she delivered this devastating information, no elaborate explanation designed to evoke sympathy, just a simple statement of circumstances that had led her to this doorway, reminded Ozzy painfully of his own children, and how they might sound if they were ever faced with such impossible choices and system failures that left vulnerable young people to fend for themselves on dangerous streets. Have you eaten anything today? He inquired, even though her look already gave away the answer, and he felt silly for posing such a clear query given her slender face and the way she carried herself, as though saving energy for necessities. Slowly, Sophia shook her head. I had some bread yesterday that someone gave me from a restaurant and some water from a fountain in the park. There was supposed to be food at the shelter, but they ran out before I got there, and they said to come back tomorrow, but they can't promise anything. Her response exposed the harsh realities of an overburdened and under-resourced support system, where even the most basic human needs couldn't be reliably met, and where vulnerable people had to navigate a maze of bureaucracy and limited services, just to get the kind of assistance that should be automatically available in a wealthy society. What happened next would be caught on security cameras from various perspectives, watched by millions of people worldwide, analyzed by social commentators, and brought up in conversations about celebrity philanthropy and social responsibility. However, in the instant, it felt entirely normal and unremarkable to both parties, just one human being responding to another's express need with the kind of immediate, comprehensive assistance that circumstances required. Ozzy took out his phone, rather than calling his driver or security team to pull him out of an uncomfortable situation, started making a series of calls that would fundamentally change Sophia's life trajectory and challenge his own presumptions about the best ways to help people in dire situations. The first call went to his hotel's concierge, explaining that he needed help arranging emergency accommodation for someone in crisis. Not just a room for one night, but the kind of comprehensive support that would address immediate needs, while also making room for longer-term planning and stability. The second call went to Sharon, who was briefed about the situation he had encountered and asked to start looking into the best residential programs for homeless youth in the Los Angeles area right away. Specifically, he asked her to look into programs that offered safe housing along with mental health services, educational support, and job training opportunities. The third call went to his management team, not to handle publicity or damage control as they might have anticipated, but to start the process of making sure Sophia would have access to comprehensive support services that addressed not only her immediate crisis, but also her long-term potential for independence and success. However, it was Ozzy's actions while waiting for help to arrive that caught the world's attention and would eventually shock millions of people. Instead of just giving her money or calling in experts to help him deal with the situation so he could go on with his evening, he sat down next to Sophia on the cold sidewalk and started talking to her about her life, her dreams, her plans for the future, and her memories of better times. Tell me about your mom, he said gently, settling onto the concrete like it was a comfortable chair instead of a filthy city sidewalk. What was she like? What did she teach you? Sophia spent the next hour after Sophia's father died in a construction accident when she was 8 years old, leaving the family without life insurance or savings. Her mother, a hotel housekeeper, had worked multiple jobs to support them both. Despite their financial difficulty, her mother was determined to provide stability and educational opportunities, frequently working double shifts and taking on extra cleaning jobs to pay for school supplies, books, and the small luxuries that made Sophia feel normal among her, which had come sooner than doctors had predicted, despite aggressive treatment that left the family financially devastated. Sophia had been placed with a foster family that was already overcrowded and under-resourced. The foster parents were well-meaning but overwhelmed by the number of children in their care, and when Sophia turned, she made the difficult decision to leave rather than continue moving between temporary situations that felt more like warehouses for unwanted children than actual homes. They had moved into a series of increasingly desperate temporary housing situations, staying with friends until they wore out their welcome, living in their car when the weather allowed, and occasionally finding space in overcrowded emergency shelters that were meant for much shorter stays. Sophia's voice became stronger and more animated as she spoke to Ozzy about the values and dreams her mother had instilled in her despite their difficult circumstances, saying, "My mom always said education was the only thing no one could take away from you. Sophia used to help me with my homework every night, even when she was exhausted from working 2 jobs, and she said that if I could get good grades and go to college, I could have the kind of life where I wouldn't have to worry about money for basic things like food and rent." Ozzy, who was genuinely interested in this extraordinary young woman's dreams and ambitions, asked, "What did you want to study?" Sophia immediately responded, "I want to be a nurse. Like the people who took care of my mom when she was sick, like they were so kind and professional, even when we couldn't always pay all the bills on time." What struck Ozzy most powerfully was Sophia's resiliency and hope despite circumstances that would have broken many adults. They treated her with dignity and respect, and they helped me understand what was happening and how to take care of her at home. I want to do that for other families who are going through what we went through. The way she expressed her thoughts and analyzed her circumstances demonstrated her intelligence, and her emotional maturity was demonstrated by her ability to process grief and loss while keeping an eye on the future. She spoke about her mother with love and gratitude, rather than bitterness about their struggles, about her current situation as temporary rather than permanent, and about her future with determination and specific goals rather than vague wishes or resigned despair. As they waited, Ozzy said to her, "You remind me of my daughter Kelly," not making the comparison lightly, but acknowledging genuine similarities in their strength and determination, not because you look alike, but because you have that same inner toughness, that same refusal to let circumstances define who you are or limit what you can become. She had maintained her faith in the possibility of positive change despite being let down by multiple systems that were supposed to protect and support her, as well as her commitment to working hard to achieve her goals. Maria Gonzalez, a veteran advocate for homeless youth with over 15 years of experience, led the social services team when they finally arrived, and they were shocked to see Ozzy and Sophia still sitting on the sidewalk, talking animatedly about books they had read, music they liked, and Sophia's specific plans for further education once she had stable housing and support. "Mr. Osbourne," Maria said, obviously impressed by the scene she was witnessing. "That's great," Ozzy said, getting up and helping Sophia to her feet with the same decency he would have shown any esteemed friend or relative. "We've set up an emergency placement for Sophia at one of our best residential facilities that specializes in supporting homeless teenagers. They have comprehensive educational programs, individual and group counseling services, job training opportunities, and most importantly, case managers who work with each resident to develop individualized plans for achieving independence and long-term stability." Ozzy, Maria, and Sophia had a thorough discussion about long-term planning that went far beyond immediate crisis intervention and temporary housing solutions. However, I want to make sure that this is more than just temporary crisis intervention. Sophia has specific goals and dreams, and I want to help her achieve them in whatever way I can. The financial commitment included not only tuition and fees, but also living expenses, books, tutoring support, and the kind of all-encompassing help that would enable Sophia to concentrate on her studies and personal growth rather than survival and basic needs. More importantly, Ozzy insisted that the financial commitment be structured as investment in Sophia's proven potential rather than charity for her unfortunate circumstances. Ozzy committed to paying for Sophia's education, not only through high school completion, but through college and possibly graduate school if she decided to pursue advanced degrees in nursing or related fields. This isn't about feeling sorry for you, Ozzy told Sophia as they prepared to leave for the residential facility, where she would start the next chapter of her life. Sophia would be expected to maintain good academic standing, take part in community service projects, and eventually help other young people who found themselves in similar situations. The support would include life skills training, mentorship, and the kind of comprehensive guidance that would help her develop the professional and personal skills necessary for long-term success and independence. The media covered the encounter almost immediately after. Bystanders recognized Ozzy despite his attempt to remain anonymous and recorded parts of his interaction with Sophia on their phones, showing him sitting on the sidewalk talking earnestly with a young homeless girl, making phone calls on her behalf, and treating her with obvious respect and genuine interest in her story and aspirations. This is about acknowledging your strength, intelligence, and potential and ensuring that you have access. Within days, Mahmoud Sophia Strong was trending globally, but not as a hashtag celebrating celebrity charity or feel-good publicity, as social media posts praised his willingness to sit on a dirty pavement and spend significant time actually listening to someone most people would have ignored or dismissed with a few dollars and a hurried good luck. Instead, most coverage focused on the thoroughness of his response and the dignity with which he had treated Sophia throughout their conversation. The residential facility where Sophia was placed received hundreds of donations inspired by her story, while similar organizations across the nation reported increased volunteer applications, funding commitments, and most importantly, policymakers starting to pay attention to the scope and complexity of issues facing homeless youth. Instead, it became a forum for serious conversations about youth homelessness, the systemic failures of foster care systems, and the importance of providing comprehensive, long-term support rather than just temporary emergency assistance to vulnerable young people who aged out of protective services without adequate preparation or ongoing support. Several states started reviewing their policies regarding aging out of foster care and support services for young people transitioning to independent, individualized support that produced successful outcomes rather than just temporary relief from immediate crises. Congressional representatives used her story in hearings about federal funding for youth services. 6 months later, Sophia was thriving in her new environment in ways that surprised even the seasoned case managers and counselors who regularly worked with homeless youth. She had not only caught up academically with her peer group, despite months of interrupted schooling, but was actually performing at advanced levels in several subjects, especially sciences and mathematics, that would be crucial for her nursing career goal. In an interview for a documentary about youth homelessness being produced by a major streaming service, Sophia explained that the most important thing Mr. Osbourne did was not give me money or find me a place to stay, although those things were obviously essential. More impressively, she had become a leader among the other residents at the facility, acting as a mentor and advocate for younger children who were just entering the program and struggling to adjust to structured living after extended periods of survival on the street. Her room became an informal study center where other residents came for help with homework and guidance on navigating educational and career planning services. She went on to say, "When someone sits down on a pavement with you and asks about your goals and your family and actually listens to your answers, they're telling you that you matter as a human being. It was treating me like a whole person with dreams, intelligence, and potential, not just a problem to be solved or a charity case to be managed. I hadn't experienced that from adults in a very long time, and it changed the way I thought about myself and what was possible for my future." Ozzy remained closely involved in Sophia's progress, not as a distant benefactor writing checks, but as something approaching a mentor and family friend who took genuine interest in her academic achievements, personal growth, and developing plans for her future career in healthcare. He attended her high school graduation ceremony, celebrated her acceptance into a competitive nursing program at UCLA, and continued to check in regularly on her academic progress and personal development. What I learned from Sophia, Ozzy reflected in his memoir, which was published the following year, and dedicated in part to her and other young people he had encountered, who demonstrated extraordinary resilience in the face of systematic failures and societal indifference, is that the most meaningful form of help isn't about fixing someone's problems for them or making their difficulties disappear with money. It's about providing them with the resources, support, and most importantly, the respect they need to achieve their own goals and become the person they want to be. 3 years after their initial encounter on that chilly December night, Sophia was thriving in her nursing program and working part-time at a free clinic that catered to the homeless in Los Angeles. Her academic achievements had gained her multiple scholarships and recognition from professors who commended her clinical expertise, as well as her remarkable ability to relate to patients who had been traumatized, addicted, or socially marginalized. She had also founded a nonprofit organization that offered advocacy, mentorship, and educational support to foster children aging out of the system, young people going through the same transitional difficulties that had caused her own time of homelessness. Sophia taught me that resilience isn't just about surviving difficult situations, Ozzy said in a keynote speech at a national conference on youth homelessness, an event that raised over $2 million for programs serving vulnerable young people. It's about holding on to hope, working towards your dreams, and believing in your own worth even when everything around you seems to be designed to convince you that you don't matter and that you'll never amount to anything. Her organization worked directly with social services agencies to identify at-risk youth and connect them with comprehensive support before they ended up on the streets. Ozzy's approach to philanthropy and social engagement was also profoundly changed by the encounter. Instead of focusing solely on writing checks to well-known charities and attending fundraising galas, he started looking for direct relationships with people and communities that could benefit from both financial support and personal involvement. His foundation shifted its focus from general charitable giving to comprehensive support for specific individuals and families, with an emphasis on education, healthcare, and the kind of wraparound services that addressed multiple factors contributing to poverty and social marginalization. 5 years later, Sophia graduated with highest honors from nursing school and was immediately accepted into a competitive pediatric nursing program at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, one of the most prestigious medical facilities on the West Coast. He explained in an extensive interview with Rolling Stone magazine about his evolving approach to social responsibility that the most effective charity occurs when you actually get to know the people you're trying to help. When you understand their specific needs, dreams, and capabilities, you can provide support that actually makes a lasting difference rather than just temporary relief from immediate problems. The night I met Mr. Osbourne, I was hungry and scared and didn't know how I was going to survive the next day, much less achieve any of the dreams my mother had taught me to believe in, Sophia said in her graduation speech, which was broadcast live on social media and viewed by millions of people worldwide. But what happened that night wasn't just that someone helped me with food and shelter, though obviously those immediate needs were crucial. In addition to Ozzy and Sharon, who had truly become surrogate grandparents, dozens of other young people who had been inspired by her story to pursue their own educational goals despite facing significant obstacles and systemic disadvantage. The story had become part of popular culture and academic curriculum, referenced in social work programs, discussed in policy seminars, and cited in research about effective interventions for youth homelessness. But it had also inspired practical changes in how cities, states, and nonprofit organizations approach services for vulnerable populations. Someone saw my potential when I had nearly forgotten it myself, and they invested in my ability to become the person I wanted to be rather than just managing my problems as a charity case. The most significant aspect of Ozzy and Sophia's relationship was its transformation from crisis intervention, genuine family connection, which had enriched both of their lives in ways neither had expected. Several major cities implemented programs specifically designed around the comprehensive relationship-based model that Ozzy and Sophia had developed, with trained mentors working long-term with individual youth to provide not just crisis intervention, but sustained support for achieving specific educational and career goals. The results of these programs consistently showed higher rates of stable housing, educational completion, and successful transition to independence compared to traditional approaches focused on temporary emergency assistance. In a television interview on the 5th anniversary of their meeting, Ozzy reflected that 2 words changed both of our lives forever: "I'm hungry." In that moment of courage and honesty, Sophia taught me that the most important response to human need isn't just to provide immediate relief, though that's obviously necessary. Sophia had become an integral part of the extended Osbourne family, and Ozzy had gained a new perspective on the difference between temporary charity and lasting investment in human potential. The encounter had shown that the most shocking acts of compassion were often not dramatic gestures or large financial commitments intended to generate publicity, but rather simple recognition of human dignity combined with sustained relationship-based support for individual growth and self-determination. It proved that authentic charity required personal investment, mutual respect, and long-term commitment rather than just momentary generosity or institutional giving. It is to see the whole person, understand their dreams and capabilities, and commit to supporting their journey towards the life they envision for themselves. Most importantly, it demonstrated how vulnerable people could accomplish amazing things that not only benefited themselves, communities of people facing similar challenges and systemic barriers to success and stability when they were treated with genuine respect and given comprehensive support that addressed both immediate needs and long-term potential. Thank you for sharing this heartwarming story of how two simple words led to a life-changing encounter and lasting transformation that shocked the world with its depth and authenticity. If this story of seeing potential in unexpected places and the transformative power of sustained compassion touched your heart, I would be extremely grateful if you could show your support by liking it. Your participation increases the number of people who read stories like this and serves as a reminder to all of us that the most meaningful deeds of kindness frequently start with recognizing the potential and complete humanity in everyone we meet.